All right.
Can we just talk? Can we just talk? Talk about where we're Talk to me, baby. Come and talk to me, baby. I really wanna. Can we talk for a minute?
Hello, and welcome to Second Sunday Live with Can We Talk with Jazz and Nick. Unfortunately, Jazz is not here today, so I'm doing solo dolo, but shout out to my co-host. She is holding it down, being a mom at a basketball tournament, so she's with us in spirit. So today we have an amazing, and I do mean an amazing show for you guys today, okay? It is going to be packed with knowledge and gems and nuggets that we all could use, okay? So I want to introduce my amazing guest today. We have Dawn, Maisha, and Angie. These women were handpicked because they not only hold a super special place in my heart, but also they are wives and have been wives for over 10 years. And that is what today's show is about. It is about walking the path, owning the journey, talking about the process of going from being single to a married woman and everything in between. So I am so ready for these nuggets today. Oh my gosh. Are you guys ready?
We're ready.
We're ready.
Okay. All right. So can we just start by, I just want to start by asking if each of you could tell me how long you've been married. I know it's been over 10 years, but I don't know the exact numbers. So we'll start with you, Dawn.
I've been married 17 years in June. I'll be
okay. Okay. And Maisha?
I've been married, or we've been married 27 years in September.
Oh,
crazy. Crazy. How am I that old?
So, Tag, okay, I'm the baby of the group. We've been married for 13 years.
Okay. All right.
But lived together for 17.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just dive right in, guys. And again, if you could just drop these nuggets on everyone here, like we will all appreciate it. So that kind of goes into the first question that I have for you. So Angie, you said that you and your husband have lived together. You lived together prior to you getting married. Was that the case with both Dawn and Maisha? Is that a preference that you guys have? Like you didn't want to move, if you didn't want to move into a marriage, or what kind of led to that decision?
Well, I could say that when I started dating my husband, he's D Powell. But when we first started dating, we dated for a year, long distance. He lived in the DMV area. I was in grad school in Virginia. So we dated that full year. And then after that, I moved to the DMV because we knew that was going to be the next step. So we lived together for 1 year as we were planning our wedding.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So 1 year we lived together. And I think it's necessary. I'm sure my grandmother, who's gone on, she wouldn't agree. But just to make sure you're able to live with a person, just because you date a person, especially long distance, once you live with them, you're starting to see the actual person. So gotcha. I would say that you need to live with a person. Now, not for years. Don't
You're
let
right.
them, buy the cow. But I do think that you should test it out.
Okay. What about you, Dawn?
So I guess full disclosure, we're talking marriage. It's not dirty secrets. Everybody knows, including my children now. So I was actually married before John.
Okay.
I got married very young at 22, and I was married for 5 years. And that's probably a whole nother podcast about the decision and that marriage. I had my own moral issues with that. But that being said, when I met John, I was newly divorced and we were dating, and it became pretty serious, but I was hesitant to rush right into a marriage realm. So we did live together. So we lived together. Let's see, we lived together 2 years before we actually got married, but we got engaged probably about 6 months after I officially moved in with him. And it was kind of gradual. We were grown. He was in the Navy, had just gotten out of the Navy. We were a little bit older. So, we had sleepovers and such, and it just kind of really became like, why don't you just live here? So yeah, we lived together officially for 2 years before we got married.
Okay. And what about you, Angie? I know you said you guys lived together previously, was that strategic or it just kind of happened?
Well, I guess similar to Dawn. So I was married before as well, and got married young. So, and that relationship didn't last too long. And it just kind of made sense because, again, we were doing sleepovers and it was like, well, and I had a young son at that time. So it was like, well, instead of keep, going back and forth and so on and so forth, why don't we just move in together? So we lived together, I'd say for 4 years or I'd say about 3 years before we actually got married. And I think it's also necessary. I think it's, it's not the, like you said, it's not the way the grandma would have said, but it's super necessary to know, the morning routine, the snoring at night. Can you handle this? The clothes thrown over here, like just all of that. So
that is too funny. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Dawn, you and Angie both touched on something, and it's very interesting because I didn't know that about you, Dawn. I had this whole fantasy that you and John were like high school sweethearts.
Oh, no.
But with that being said, one of the questions that I really would like to ask you and Angie is, from your first marriage to where you are, your second marriage, in between that time and just during that time also, would you say that you as a person, your values, like what's important to you has changed from the first marriage to the second marriage? And did you take all of those lessons into your second marriage, or do you find that there are some things that are just concrete that you wanted to keep no matter what? Like some things were just non-negotiable?
I think for me, yeah, there were definitely some things that were non-negotiable. I think I learned a lot from the first marriage to the second one, in how I would allow myself to be treated. I was young the first time, not to air his dirty laundry, but he had his own issues.
Of course.
Yeah, the first one. And it was taking me down, and I was finishing my teaching degree, and I just knew I had to get out. So I had to take care of myself. And I struggled with that from a moral standpoint, from a religious standpoint, because, I had taken these vows. So I think one thing that helped with John and I then is I kind of knew I was a little bit older. I knew who I was. I was secure in who I was, and I knew what I wouldn't allow someone to do to me. That being said, we are who we are. So some of the issues, were my issues too. So we had to learn and grow together and work through those. And marriage is not easy, so it's been up and down, and we have our moments. But I think that definitely there were certain things that I learned that I wouldn't do the second time.
Okay. What about you, Angie?
So the beauty of both of my marriages, the first one, he was an amazing guy. I was just young. And I thought with marriage comes the white picket fence, like everybody's just all in love all the time. And, I just thought it was supposed to be this amazing thing. I didn't know about the work. So and being so young, having met at 21, married by 23, had our child at 25, I was like, well, this sucks. Like, I got a baby. That's a lot of work. You're a lot of work. I don't want this. And then during the second marriage, I realized, no, that's just marriage. Marriage is a lot of work. So, but I learned that in the first marriage to know that I didn't come in with those same idealistic thoughts with the second marriage, because I knew, okay, this is just how marriage is.
Gotcha. So with that being said, right? So one of the things that I really, really wanted to ask each of you is, do you feel like, again, because we were all like raised different, but I know that the common denominator between all of us is our faith. So my question to you is, do you feel like you were raised and fully prepared to be a wife? Like, do you feel like you have embodied your version of what a Proverbs 31 woman is? And if not, what did you have to kind of learn along the way? What was your hands-on training to get to kind of where you are? Maisha, I'm gonna start with you because you've been married the longest.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say yes. And that goes into forgiveness. You know, our faith goes into forgiveness and realizing that we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. So that's the same way we would want somebody to forgive us. We need
Mm-hmm.
to forgive them. But I always look to my grandparents who were married forever, you know, from the time they were in their young 20s to death. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother was 97 when she passed away. Granddaddy was 85. But I look to them. So even though I have my mom who's with my stepdad who raised me from the time that I was in kindergarten, my grandparents were always my role models. And it's crazy
Gotcha.
because even now, all these years later, you know, D said to me a couple weeks ago, he was like, babe, we're like your grandma and granddad. Like of the family, people look up to us for our relationship. They look up to us for our faith, for us trying to
Mm-hmm.
make the right decisions. And it's because I followed their lead.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Angie, do you feel like you were groomed to be a wife?
I wasn't. I feel like, you know, my parents were married for a short while when I was younger, and
Mm-hmm.
then my mom, you know, got with my stepdad, and they were just in like a common law marriage. But my mom was super like independent, not like very docile, you know, just we literally were joking about this yesterday, an alpha woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't feel like, you know, I learned the wifely duties.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, and I don't know where it came from, I, you know, in terms of kind of catering to my man, I've learned in terms of like the nurturing part, the feeding, you know, the picking up after whatever, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I'm not doing all that.
I
I didn't
got
agree
that
to that
piece.
part. Like that's a different part of the question. This is a partnership. I'm not your mom. I'm not your mom. This
I
is a
know. And
partnership.
I guess because yeah, I kind of become he's 17 years my senior, which is even a little different as well, but I've become that for him. So yeah. So I don't know where it came from. But I got it a little bit.
Okay. Okay. And what about you, Dawn?
I think to some extent I did have that role model. My mom and dad were married, you know, until he passed almost 10 years ago. So I had that model of they had a good relationship. I think that the times were different. You know, I was born in the
Mm-hmm.
70s, so it's definitely different. So I think I had a good model of what love should look like. And then
Mm-hmm.
I also had the model of what I didn't want my relationship to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense, Angie, with that, like my mom had to have dinner on the table at 4:30 when my dad got home, you know, and that's I'm not
Oh
that
wow.
I'm not that wife, you know. I provide in lots of other ways for our family and support my husband. But I think that the biggest thing for me to be prepared to have that kind of relationship was to understand that I have to give myself grace and I have to give him grace. And just back to what you said earlier, Angie, is it's work. It's not easy. And even going into it the second time, I was a little surprised sometimes at the work, you know, that it takes. So I think I went into it with my eyes open, but that being said, I don't know that I was prepared.
Gotcha.
I hope to prepare my daughter better than I.
Yeah.
Oh, I know your daughter. She is going to be like, wait a minute now.
Right? Right. Exactly.
So it's something that Angie, you said, as far as like kind of, you know, catering to your husband. A lot of people, especially a lot of women, they have a huge problem with the word submission. So when you are a wife, because this is what I feel is happening, I feel like there are a lot of women who they want the marriage. They want the wedding, but they don't want the marriage. They don't want to put in the work that it requires to be a wife. They don't want to be submissive. They don't want to be a partner. They still want to basically do them, but have somebody's last name. So how do you all view submission? And anyone can take this.
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
Just because I'm probably, well, again, I don't know age, but because I've been married the least, I'm assuming maybe I'm the baby of the group. I don't know, but
I think so.
okay. But y'all look super, super young, so I wasn't sure about that. So okay, now you know me, Nikki.
Yeah.
Like I'm still going to do me, right? And I
Mhm.
also think because I'm a new empty nester and I feel like I've been in a marriage or parenting most of my adult life,
Mhm.
now I'm ready to do me. I'm ready to get my life back. And, you know, with my husband being a little older than me, he's like, hold on now. But I'm like, you had your time. This is my time. So
Mhm.
I don't feel submissive, but I do think there are roles. And
Mhm.
my role in this marriage is to, again, make sure his doctor's appointments are made, make sure he, you know, knows his schedule, make sure he's fed, you know, again, the house is tidy. Those are my roles. But when it's time to go to happy hour with the girls, deuces, your food is in the refrigerator. I've prepared it. It's all good. Just warm it up.
Mhm.
But I
Very
will
nice
make
of
sure
you.
he's eaten for the day. I won't just say, go do you.
Okay. Maisha said that's very nice of
It's
you.
very nice of you. My husband, he always reminds me because my grandma was Beck, and he's like, yeah, Beck used to have hot meals on the table, every day. There wouldn't be a Sunday without food, and she would cook every day. I said, yeah, but that Beck didn't go out and work the same way you work.
Exactly.
So the fact that, he travels a lot, I work a lot, and I do other things for fun because he does travel, different friend groups or whatever. But I too have a problem with the word submission, but I just think that submission it changes over time.
Mhm.
Mm.
I think for the most part, it's being considerate of your spouse. Everything that I do, I consider him. Everything
Gotcha.
that he does, he considers me. Now, if there's like a major household decision, I do look to him for leadership. And I
Mhm.
think that I want my husband to be able to lead the family. He is the king of the family. Like, I agree and all of that. But as far as like the traditional way submission used to look,
Mhm.
yeah, it doesn't look like that. That doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for our relationship.
Gotcha. And like Maisha, just like Angie, you're an empty nest, like your kids are grown, so
Right.
you don't, I guess it's a little different. Whereas, Dawn, you still have kids, one in middle school, one in high school.
Yeah.
So it's a little different for you. So what does that look like for you?
I too think I have trouble with the word submission and
I do.
definitely not in the traditional sense of the word. I think there are times for it. And I think Maisha said it right. Like, we have different roles in our relationship. I certainly look to him to lead in certain areas. And then other areas, I know he's looking at me to lead, especially when the kids were little. He deferred to me. It was constantly me. And you guys all have kids, sometimes in those early years, there were moments where like, why does it have to be me? Like, I don't know either. I'm trying to figure it out. And some of that's ebbed and flowed as they've gotten older. Sometimes, especially, we have a 15, almost 16-year-old son. I have to look to him because boys are different. And then we've got the tween girl, and boy, is she different. But I think it's varied. So I wouldn't say traditional sense of the word submission, because I certainly, I think earlier on I was more of the, okay, this is dinner and we're eating dinner at the same time. But now our kids are getting older, and I have lots of other jobs that I'm doing, and he's working from home. So sometimes he's getting dinner ready, or he's feeding the kids. And so that looks different. But I think there's definitely a time in a situation where I think we each submit to each other. And I think that's part of that partnership.
Right.
I love that. I love that. Each of you spoke about roles. So is this something that in the dating process you all talked about with your partners? Like, oh, well, this is how I view, the roles of the house, or this is how I view things? Or was it just kind of a natural flow into, this is what I'm good at, this is what you're good at, and this is how we, kind of bounce and feed off of each other in this relationship? How did that happen?
I'll speak for that. We didn't have those discussions when we were dating and even first lived together. And that's something I wish that we had. I think some of the roles we took on based on, quote, societal traditional norms, or what I saw my parents do. and some of that's changed because at certain points, especially as we had kids and I was still working with 2 kids, I started to resent some of those roles, even as far as like the laundry. So,
Mhm.
some of that changed. Like I don't do his laundry anymore. I stopped doing everybody's laundry during the pandemic. And I'm much happier now that I didn't take on that. Like I think back to the weekends where I was resentful of everyone because I was doing mountains of laundry and trying to get it done. And not that I don't sometimes throw laundry in, and we don't need to get into the full details of our laundry schedule, but for the most part during the pandemic, the kids, were upper elementary and middle school. And I said, you know what, you need to learn. And
Mhm.
you're a grown man, as you like to tell me, you were in the Navy and you survived. You certainly know how to do laundry. And so that was really nice. And to my knowledge, he doesn't resent taking that role back. He's fine with it. But things like that, he takes care of the outside of the house. I pretty much take care of the inside of the house.
Right.
Let me
Those
tell
are
y'all, they're outside of their house. Oh my God. They have a
And he
pool
likes
that
that.
is
Gorgeous.
amazing.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. I like that. So when it comes to, I guess, when it comes to kind of where you all are now, because all of you are independent women and you have your own careers, do you feel that there is any part of you that had to dimmer when you became a wife? Like, independently as a single woman, you can let your light shine as bright as it possibly can. Do you feel that when you become a wife, that is a part of being a partner, just kind of dimming your light a little bit, not changing who you are, not completely losing yourself, but
Right.
just dimming yourself a little bit just so you guys can equally shine? How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, I don't think that you should ever have to dim your light. Like if it's the person that you're supposed to be with, you would need to adjust your light.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that for me, because I got married so young, we started dating when I was 21. We got married when I was 23. It's like we grew up together, sort of. So it's like I
Mm-hmm.
grew into myself, he grew into his self, and we've just adjusted. It's kind of like a double dutch almost.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a matter of me dimming myself because I was still growing into myself and I'm still changing, So I think that's the difference with us because we sort of grown together. Like I've been married almost longer, like
And you've been
I
alive.
have more years married than not,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What about you, Angie?
And I agree. Again, if you have a strong man, that's nothing.
Bingo.
I wouldn't even think about anything like that. So super supportive, wants me to, be the best me possible. So
Mhm.
again, if you're with the right person, that shouldn't even be a question that ever comes up.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
I'm gonna shine as bright as possible.
Uh-huh.
Ditto. I will say that that's one thing I can say about our relationship is he's never tried to hold me back or diminish anything I'm doing. He's right there cheering me on and picking up, quote, the slack if I'm,
Mhm.
working multiple things. He's fine with that,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can imagine, because both Dawn and Maisha, both of you are educators. So I'm sure that is, tasking in itself. And, I'm sure that just takes a bit out of you every day because, you are sometimes the only person that these children have. You're their mom, their grandma, their counselor, their principal, their auntie, their hairdresser, everything, So
Yep.
I'm sure that takes a lot of you, and then to have to come home and then give all that to your family. So I'm sure that is something that's that's very just kind of like, oh, okay, I can do this.
Exactly.
If you all could give okay, Maisha, all of you kind of got to start dating like around 21, 22 or whatever. So if you could give your 18-year-old self advice on love, marriage, independency, and just knowing your worth, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
So many things.
Yeah.
But I think that if I could just choose a couple things, I would say to always remain true to yourself. Okay.
Mhm.
I would say to whoever you choose to marry, make sure that you all remain friends. And that's how you remember why you stay together because you're friends first.
Okay.
And because goodness, I had another good one. Remain friends. That way, oh yeah, and don't keep up with who's right or wrong. Because so many times you
Mhm.
could get caught up on winning an argument or proving your point. But at the end of the day, if that doesn't make your situation or your union or better, like what's the point?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So don't keep score.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
And my main thing would be take your time. I was super eager to get married, have my child, and do all of that. That I feel like then I was also trying to be young while trying to be married and mothering, and
Mhm.
it didn't go together well. So so luckily I had my master's before I had my son. But get your education. Also, just be an adult experiencing life.
Yes.
Find
Yes.
yourself, know yourself, and then you can go into your relationship, fully confident, fully knowing yourself, your worth, and all of that good stuff. So just, it's no rush.
Mhm.
You'll be married, you will be young for a short time, will be not young for a much longer
Right.
Okay. And Dawn.
I think similarly, it's funny. I think back to my 18, 22-year-old self getting married for the first time at 22. People tried to stop me that I was young. So I think I would just try to tell myself, I like what Angie said about no rush.
Mhm.
I think in hindsight, I rushed because I thought like this is what I wanted. And I did at the time and worked hard at it for 5 years. But I think that I lost that little bit of chunk of my youth because I was trying to make a marriage work that was not going to work. So I think that is some of what I brought into my marriage with John is I knew while marriage is not difficult, it has to be the two of us trying to make it work. I mean, I said, well, marriage can be difficult. It's not always easy. It doesn't have to be as difficult as it was the first time. I don't know if that makes
Okay.
sense. Like, marriage is hard work, but it was way harder than it had to be the first time. And I think that was something, if I could tell myself again, trust your intuition because there were signs that I ignored.
Okay.
And I think I guess, hindsight's 2020, but the helpful thing was then in the second marriage, my eyes were way wide open to everything that was happening.
Gotcha.
Like
Gotcha.
this.
Yeah. I was like saucer. I was like, oh, okay. That's what
Right.
he was a strong man to stick around because he had to make up for some things that had nothing to do with him,
Right.
And John's awesome. He's I know I still have a lot of growing to do. Lord knows I do. It's probably why my last name is still the same. But I also know that it's really bad at me, but I can hold the grudge. And I'm trying to get better. Lord knows I'm a work in progress. Do you all subscribe to the notion of never going to bed upset?
No.
It's gonna happen.
Try that for a while.
It's gonna happen.
I'm sorry. I thought that at one point, especially when John and I were together, and no, it happens because there's sometimes I have said this, and I've said this to the man. I love him with all my heart, and I don't see us going anywhere. But there are some moments where I'm like, I don't like you very much, and I don't want to talk to you right now. And sometimes both of us, our personalities, we need space, and sometimes that means we go to bed. I know he loves me and I love him, but we go to bed not happy with each other. And sometimes that gives us what we need to be able to come back and talk about it the next day.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's no such, I can't do that. Like, because I feel like that's a fake, honestly, that would be a fake kind of conversation. And let's because some stuff takes a little longer than,
Right.
If let's just say it was an argument at dinner time, it might take a little longer than 3 hours to get over by the time it's time to go to bed. So, but just don't hold on it too long because again, and because it that's not healthy. I hate tense, tension in the house. And when it is, especially if you have young ones in the house, everybody can feel it. So don't let it drag on too long, but a night might happen.
Mhm.
Yes. Like we used to try to go by that because that was something my grandma would always tell me. But you're
Mhm.
right. Sometimes I have to work through things. Sometimes he has to work through things. But what I can say is it never goes long. Like by that next day, because I hate the feeling
Mhm.
of not being able to reach out to him or not be able to laugh with him or like he's my person, I'm his person. So we won't let that time, it won't be too much time before we get it right.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
Don't let it fester, but sometimes you need a little air.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And that's
Gotcha.
okay.
Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation. I feel like I've learned so much. And, again, you all were literally handpicked because of the role in which you have played in my life. And I knew that I could learn so much from you. I mean, Maisha, we've been in each other's lives for over 20 years now.
Yes.
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 Angie's married to my uncle. So
Okay.
there's that. And Dawn and I have been friends since I don't know, when did the kids start school? Like
When they were 3, I think.
yeah.
Wow.
So for 10
okay.
years,
Oh.
our kids.
And by the way, Lila wants to be on the podcast, so I don't know if you're planning a kid podcast. When she found out I was coming with Miss Nikita, she was like, "What?"
And your brother too, Kia.
Yes.
She's like, well,
Like,
she didn't ask me. I was like, I'm sure there's going to be a topic that comes up that you could participate in.
yes. So again, you all hold a very special place in my heart. So I knew once Jasmine and I came up with this topic, I knew exactly who I wanted. Like I just knew that it would be such a wealth of information that I could get from you guys. So I thank you so very much for being here. I know it might have been a little nerve-wracking when you got the text message like, wait, what? So again, I thank you so much. I love each and every one of you. And before we leave, what we do at the end of each show is just give a little word of encouragement to kind of carry us through the week. So if you all could provide we call it a motivational moment. So just give our audience a motivational moment, and then I will let you guys go. All right, Maisha, you can start.
Well, maybe I could start with focus on the positive. Sometimes even when things seem dim, it may be something at work, a negative situation, always try to pull the positive out of that moment because there's always a positive there.
Yeah. Even when it's hard to see, there's always a positive there. You're right.
Exactly.
Yes. Angie.
And I mean, just know that again, and for this topic in particular, marriage is work, but it's beautiful. And it is rewarding, but you put the work in and you'll see the benefits full circle. So don't give up.
Okay. And Dawn.
I think my word lately for myself, I don't know if this is super motivational, has just been grace. I don't know, you mentioned being an educator. Like there's just so much between being a mom and a wife and a teacher that I have to sometimes give myself grace. I put too much on my plate. So my motivation moment to myself really is just breathe and give yourself grace and do the best that you can with, each activity, whether that's being a mom at the moment or a wife at the moment or, whatever your career path is. Sometimes we need to extend that grace to ourselves because I think I'm really good at extending that grace to other people, but not to myself.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Again, thank you all so much for being here. This is amazing. Like you guys have won my heart. So thank you so very much. And I appreciate and love you all. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one, ladies.
Awesome.
Talk to me, baby. Come and talk to me.